Hi everyone, my name's Sarah and I'm going to kick off my new TikTok page with a true crime story that is also a survival story. This is going to be about Mary Vincent and it's going to be a few different parts. I can't fit all of the information into 60 seconds, but I hope you guys learned something and yeah, let me go ahead and tell you the story. Mary Vincent was born in 1963 in Las Vegas to a mechanic and a blackjack dealer. In 1978, she was just 15 years old and she was hitchhiking through Berkeley, California. This is where Mary meets for the first time and accepts a ride from Lawrence Singleton. During a several-hour, virtually overnight ordeal, he sexually assaulted her 6 or more times and at one point struck her twice on the head with a sledgehammer. Finally, after all of this that she endured, she thought that he was going to set her free because that's what he said he was going to do. Unfortunately for Mary, Lawrence Singleton's idea of setting her free was not quite what she had imagined. He drove her out to a remote area, pulled her out of his van, and proceeded to chop both of her arms off below the elbow with an axe. As if that wasn't enough, he also threw her off of the side of a 30-foot cliff, breaking several of her ribs on the way down. Obviously, he thought that she was dead, so Lawrence Singleton drove off and left her there. But Mary had other plans. She could not live with the thought of Lawrence doing this to another girl, so she shoved her amputated arms into the dirt on the side of the cliff to clot the bleeding and proceeded to climb up this 30-foot cliff and walk 3 miles to the nearest vehicle person she could find. Now remember, she's in the middle of nowhere and it's completely dark, but she has more willpower than almost anyone I've ever heard of. Mary began using prosthetic arms just 2 weeks after her attack. She used spare parts from broken down electronics to modify her prosthetics into custom designs. This includes a custom prosthetic that she created for bowling. As an adult, Mary attended the University of Nevada in Las Vegas. She has become a professional artist and she likes to work primarily with chalk pastels. She likes to create powerfully upbeat women like female action figures. She also likes to draw family and individual portraits for commissions. At one point, Mary Vincent was married and she had 2 sons, but since then she has gone through a divorce. Mary Vincent has used her experiences to become an advocate for other people who are assaulted and experience things similar to what she experienced. She is a mother, an advocate, and an artist, and in many people's opinions, including mine, a hero. I hope you enjoyed or learned something about Mary Vincent's story. Mary was also awarded nearly $2.6 million in a civil suit against Lawrence. However, she never saw a penny of it because he had no money. After he was released 8 years later, Lawrence went on to succeed in murdering a woman in Florida in 1997. Her name was Roxanne Hayes. Mary traveled from California to Tampa, Florida to testify yet again at Lawrence's trial. Here, he was sentenced to death. However, he never saw his execution date because he died in 2001 from cancer.
Here's part 2 of Marie Manning and the Bermondsey horror case. Marie realised she'd made a huge mistake when choosing a suitor and decided that if she couldn't have Patrick O'Connor, well, then she could at least have his money. Frederick and Marie often had Patrick over for lavish dinners at their home, and so they made plans to murder him at one of these dinners on the 8th of August in 1849. Their original plan failed, and so Marie invited him back the following day, apparently so that they could be more intimate. On the 8th of August, Marie Manning killed Patrick O'Connor by shooting him at close range in the back of the head. Marie and Frederick then buried the body in a pre-dug grave under their kitchen floor. And they then had dinner together as if nothing had just happened. Marie then broke into his home in East London and stole hundreds of pounds, jewellery and foreign railway bonds. The police were soon on to the couple, and so they decided to flee to opposite ends of the country. The police soon found O'Connor's body, and the pair were brought back to London for trial. After being found guilty, they were hanged for their crime on November 13th. Really weird murders you've probably never heard of, part 2. This is a lady named Marie Manning who murdered her lover in a case that later became known as the Bermondsey Horror. Marie Manning was born in Switzerland in 1821, but in her early 20s she upped and moved to England to work as a lady's maid for the very wealthy Lady Blantyre at Stafford House in London. Whilst working at Stafford House, Marie became obsessed with the idea of living a life of luxury and wealth rather than the life of poverty she'd been brought up in. Marie soon attracted the gaze of two very wealthy men, one named Patrick O'Connor and one named Frederick Manning. As I'm sure you've guessed, Marie decided to marry Frederick Manning, who promised Marie that he was about to inherit a substantial fortune from his mother. This was in fact a complete lie, which Marie found out soon after their wedding. Marie began sleeping with Patrick O'Connor, which apparently her husband knew about. I've run out of time, so the next part of this story is posted on my channel right now.
Hi, I'm Cam and this is Sydney Loof Part 1. In 2017, 24-year-old Sydney Loof matched with a girl named Aubrey on Tinder. The two went on a date and she texted her friend just got done chilling with a super cute girl. This was followed by, I hope she doesn't have a boyfriend, I didn't ask. On November 15th of that year, Sydney went on a second date with Aubrey, who she referred to as her dream girl. In reality, this dream girl was lying about who she was and her true intentions. Aubrey's real name was Bailey Boswell, and she and her boyfriend Aubrey Trail had been plotting for months to murder someone. They used social media to contact potential victims and finally settled on Sydney. Surveillance footage just hours before Sydney disappeared showed Aubrey buying duct tape, knives, trash bags, and bleach. Aubrey also visited Sydney's place of work and was caught watching her leave. Sydney failed to show up for work the next morning and was reported missing by her mother at 5 p.m. on the 16th. That same night, the landlord that lived above Bailey and Aubrey reported a strong odor of bleach. On November 19th, police searched their apartment and found the walls had been wiped down. Aubrey and Bailey had fled. Aubrey Trail then uploaded a video to Facebook declaring his innocence. This was before police even announced him as a suspect. On November 30th, Aubrey and Bailey were arrested at a hotel on separate charges. Sometime around December 4th, Sydney Loof's body was found in a ditch off a rural road when someone saw an arm sticking out of a trash bag. She was immediately identified through her tattoo that read, "Everything will be wonderful someday." Her cause of death was strangulation. Aubrey testified that Sydney was killed by accident and he removed her organs after he panicked. On June 24th, 2019, while Aubrey was in court for her murder, he shouted, quote, "Bailey is innocent and I curse you all," before slashing his throat and falling out of his wheelchair. Later during Bailey's trial, a witness told the court that Aubrey and Bailey said they could make $1 million torturing and slaying someone on video. Today, June 9th, 2021, Aubrey Trail was sentenced to death. Bailey Boswell will be sentenced later this year and may also face the same fate.
These identical twins married another set of identical twins.
Even though doctors had told them not to do it. Brittany and Brianna were twins, who literally did everything together. They both attended law school together and even got the exact same grades. When they graduated, they started working at the same law firm, and they even shared the same bed for most of their lives. One day, they met another set of twins. Their names were Josh and Jeremy. The girls fell instantly in love with them. They both got proposed to at the same time and even decided to have their wedding ceremonies together. Now here's the weird part. The couples moved into the same house together and were planning to have a baby at the exact same time. But doctors told them their children would not be cousins but siblings due to the DNA. For more 7
This photo, taken September 29, 2017, was the last photo ever taken of 25-year-old Anne Faber. Anne was on a bike ride in Bern, Netherlands when she was caught in the rain. She stopped to send a selfie to her boyfriend at around 6:50 p.m., and then she disappeared. Friends, family, and authorities with canine units searched for Anne, and eventually some of her personal items were discovered. Her coat, her backpack, and her bike were all located. 2 weeks later, Anne's body was discovered buried in a nature preserve in Zeewolde. Soon they had a lead. DNA found on her jacket was tested, and it turned out there was a match. The match was for a 27-year-old man named Michael Penhouse. This guy has a very dangerous background. He went to prison for raping 2 teenage girls in 2010. After serving 2/3 of his sentence, he was released. Before going back into society, he checked into a psychiatric facility to get help for a drug problem. And here's where you're gonna get mad. Sex offenders in psychiatric treatment facilities in the Netherlands are required to have supervision. However, privacy laws allowed Penhouse to enter the facility without ever disclosing that, so they had no idea he was a threat, which meant they would allow him to leave for short periods of time unsupervised. One of those times was September 29th, the day that Anne was on her bike ride. Once they had the DNA match, authorities wasted no time arresting Penhouse. This was in March of 2018. He was actually pretty forthcoming with what happened that day. He claimed he left the facility with a bunch of tools hidden in a bag, and he told them he was going to refuel his scooter. As he rode his scooter, he saw Anne on her bike and he caused a collision. He then attacked her, brutally raped her, broke her phone so it couldn't be traced, and then forced her to walk deep into the woods. There, he slit her throat with a knife and she died. He then acted out a very detailed disposal plan. After the attack, he hid her in the woods under a pile of leaves. He then returned the very next day with his mother's car and decided to move the body. First, he thoroughly washed her with chlorine to dispose of any evidence and then buried her in the nature preserve. He took her belongings and then scattered them in different locations all over. Panhouse went to trial for murder and rape. His legal team was fighting that it was not actually considered murder. In the Netherlands, murder means it's premeditated and it's intentional. And they were saying that he never intended to kill anyone that day. It just happened. He ended up getting sentenced to 28 years for manslaughter. Then in June of 2020, his sentence was reduced by 4 months because his rights were violated during his violent arrest and he hurt his shoulder. Aww. I can't help but think we should reconsider the rules around privacy in these treatment facilities. Had he been monitored correctly, Anne Faber would still be alive.
Let's discuss one of my most requested cases, and why I personally believe that Gypsy Rose Blanchard should have never been in prison. Some of you may be familiar with this story, whether it's because of documentaries or the recent show The Act on Hulu. But I hate to inform you that The Act is pretty problematic. One, because some things are very factually incorrect, but also Gypsy Rose here wasn't getting any money from the show, even though she was apparently supposed to. Let's dive into this. Gypsy here was born in 1991. Her father, Ron, was 17 and her mother, Dee Dee, was 24. Ron figured that he would marry Dee Dee, but realized after Gypsy was born that he was not ready to be a father. For years, Dee Dee was painting Ron to be an absolutely horrible person, which Gypsy caught on to and was also told to tell people that he was a horrible person. But Ron was actually paying $1,200 a month in child support. He was buying Gypsy and Dee Dee whatever they asked for. He made an effort to see her, but Dee Dee limited this. When Gypsy was a baby, Dee Dee claimed that she had sleep apnea, and then it just got progressively worse from there. Dee Dee claimed that her daughter Gypsy had leukemia and muscular dystrophy and bound her to a wheelchair, feeding her through a feeding tube. She slept with a breathing machine. She apparently had seizures. She suffered both from hearing and visual impairments. Because of this, Gypsy was just given an array of medications. Experts believe that because of the medications, this is what caused Gypsy's teeth to rot. Even though Dee Dee was claiming that this was because of her sugar allergy, but eventually she had surgery, had all of her teeth removed, and Dee Dee even had Gypsy undergo eye surgery. And the biggest catch that I think you know already was this all was a lie. Gypsy was a very healthy child, didn't have any of the problems that Dee Dee was claiming she had. So from here, people were able to determine that Dee Dee suffered from Munchausen by proxy. So how did this go on? So according to Dee Dee, they lost their home to Hurricane Katrina, so they relocated in Missouri. So they were getting funds from the Hurricane Relief Fund. Then because of Gypsy's quote-unquote illnesses, they were getting free trips by charity-sponsored organizations and getting to go to Disney World, which is where this viral video comes in, where this person saw Gypsy at Disney. Habitat for Humanity even built them a house, which had a ramp, and it was pink. Apparently, if any doctor ever questioned Gypsy's medical history and maybe didn't believe Gypsy or Dee Dee would take Gypsy to another doctor. Then, at the age of 14, Gypsy saw a neurologist who kind of caught on to this, but he didn't report anything to the authorities because it's kind of rude to question if a child might not have leukemia. So he didn't say anything because he didn't have enough evidence. In 2009, an anonymous report was sent to the authorities. Caretakers came and checked out the home, but didn't see anything wrong, so they left. And according to Gypsy, Dee Dee was very abusive. Gypsy was at a convention where she met this man and they had planned to run away together. Dee Dee claimed, though, that Gypsy was underage and yelled at the person, and this is when Dee Dee smashed all of Gypsy's electronics, actually bound her to her bed. But here's another interesting thing. Gypsy wasn't underage. Gypsy was actually 19. Dee Dee was actually altering Gypsy's birth certificate and claimed that Gypsy had the mind of a 7-year-old, but this wasn't true. Gypsy, though, did manage to get a hold of a laptop, and she joined a Christian dating site where she met Nicholas Godejohn. Two apparently conspired to kill Dee Dee. Nicholas would go on later to say that he would do anything for Gypsy and wanted to see her out of that situation. So he came over one night. Gypsy hid in her bedroom while Nicholas stabbed Dee Dee to death. The two then took off to Wisconsin where his parents lived. And according to Gypsy, she wanted her mother found, so this is where the infamous Facebook post comes in. I cut off a little bit of the bottom there because it gets really dark. Now, because of the Facebook post, authorities were able to trace it back to the exact house where Gypsy and Nicholas were hiding. Nicholas's parents had no idea what was going on. And this is when word got out that Gypsy could walk. The only reason she didn't have hair was because her mother was shaving it, not because she was undergoing chemotherapy. She was perfectly healthy. In 2016, Gypsy pled guilty to second-degree murder and received 10 awful years in prison. Nicholas was charged with first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Nicholas also claimed to have an alternative side to him. He claimed to have two personalities, and one was very dark and very grim, and that's the personality that killed Dee Dee. But did tell authorities that this was all Gypsy's idea. It's rumored that this is not the only crime that Dee Dee was committing. Dee Dee's family believes that she had a hand in the death of her own mother, and even her stepmother Laura claims that she tried to kill her with weed poisoning. Gypsy is eligible for parole in 2024 and claims that she's had more freedom in prison, but does hate that her mother is dead.
She loves singing. She gets on with life as a dancer. She's an enchanting kind of gal. She likes watching our favorite show on Sundays. She likes singing in the shower in the week. She likes to contemplate about it. But when she starts to daydream, her mind turns straight to singing. Oh, oh, oh. Sometimes I look at her and I look into her eyes. I notice the way she thinks about him with a smile, curved lips she just can't disguise. She thinks it's him making her life worthwhile. Why is it so hard for her to decide which she loves more? Him more. She likes to use words like freak. She likes to use words like cheers. She likes to use words about him. But when she stops her talking, her mind turns straight to singing. Oh, oh, oh. Sometimes I look at her and I look into her eyes. I notice the way she thinks about him with a smile, curved lips she just can't disguise. She thinks it's him making her life worthwhile. Why is it so hard for her to decide which she loves more? Him more. She likes to hang out with Amy. She likes to kick back with Laura. But when left alone, her mind turns straight to him. Oh, oh, oh. She's not too fond of me. She really hates my mum. But she just thinks back to him. And she's happy once again. I find that so many people are brilliant, but you are mostly resilient. I like the way you smile. You do it so well. I like the way you dance. You do it like a glance. I like the way you stand. You do it like a demand. You find so many people are futile, but you are mostly brutal. I love the way you wear your hair, spreading your style everywhere. You're like a style fountain. You find so many people are idiotic, but you are mostly melodic. I like the way you smile. You do it so well. I like the way you dance. You do it like a glance. I like the way you stand. You do it like a demand. You're the perfect woman. No one brings me joy like you can. You find so many people are regrettable, but you are mostly unforgettable, resilient, brutal and little idiotic. Unforgettable and divine too are the qualities